There are a few simple yet big mistakes that sim racers make when driving on their simulator that cost them lots and lots of lap time. In this video, I'm going to use our subscribers' onboard footage to show you these three biggest mistakes and explain how you can quickly fix them and generate a lower lap time. Ultimately, you'll have a car that is easy to drive, has more grip, and will allow you to win those sim races. Hi, I'm Scott Mansell, head coach from Driver61 Sim Racing, where we teach you to improve your technique, win races and fulfill your potential as a driver. So here we are in the footage. Now, this driver isn't necessarily making these mistakes, but I want to use the footage to explain how you can improve your technique to make your lap times quicker. So the first big mistake that I see is that drivers just aren't looking in the right area. Everything that you do in the car comes from vision. You need to be understanding how you're progressing along the racetrack and what's coming up to you so that you can visualize the racing line through the next corner, adjust the speed appropriately and get on the throttle at the right point to maximize your exit. So in terms of vision, the biggest mistake is drivers generally don't look far enough ahead. The quicker that you're going on track, the further ahead you need to look. But it's our natural instinct as humans to actually narrow down our vision. And this happens in the real world as well. So if your vision is too close to the car, say in this area, as you can see on the footage here, we're not seeing the information or the corners coming at us early enough, which means that we're having to react and we'll have to change steering angle through the corner. The first thing that you need to do is to move your vision further up the road. So here, for example, we're looking at the apex as soon as we possibly can, maybe a little bit on the outside, but then back to the inside of the corner. We're looking at the corner, then looking to the outside of the corner, all the way down the road here, scanning through this whole section. And it can help you in race situations because if somebody's gone off, you see it really early. Looking around the corner into the braking zone here, and you can just pick out the apex on the inside, outside, inside, and now we're looking for the exit as soon as you can, looking all the way out. So the important thing here is that we're looking a long way ahead, as far ahead as we possibly can, but then we also need to scan back and forth. If you're only looking a long way ahead, you lose the information of what's just in front of you in the car, and that can be a problem because you lose some accuracy on the outside of the circuit as you're turning the car in. Now, as a rule of thumb, you want to always be looking a stage ahead of yourself when you're coming into a corner. So when you're braking, you're looking down at the apex, not the turning point, the apex. So we're looking down at the inside of the corner. Just before we're coming into the apex, then we want to move our vision to the outside of the track and looking to the exit. So you're always that one step ahead of yourself, maybe a second and a half or 2 seconds. The next biggest mistake that I see drivers make is that there's too much of a change in speed. And by that I mean that they're overslowing the car into the apex of a corner. Now, this is a tricky one because sometimes when we're driving, we can get a bit of a negative feedback loop in terms of if we brake harder into a corner, the rear of the car will end up sliding and breaking traction, which makes you think that the car's at the limit. However, it's only braking traction at the rear because the weight is in the nose of the car because you're so heavily decelerating when you turn the car in. The rear is kind of up in the air and doesn't have much weight over it. You then think that, well, you're at the limit and there's no way that you can go faster into the corner. However, if you braked and then eased up as you're turning into the corner, you allow the front to rise up, you allow more grip to go to the rear of the car, and the car will be better balanced and therefore have more grip, which means you can enter the corner quicker. Now, this is counterintuitive because the brake means safety, right? You want to slow the car down, you want to be safe, you get on the brakes. However, in this instance, when you're coming into the corner, a lot of the time it's much better to come up out the brakes to a light pressure, not completely off, but to a light pressure, and that controls the car much better on the way into the corner. So let's put this into perspective here with the footage that we have here. We're coming into the hairpin, and let's watch the braking pressure here. You can see that we're full on the brakes at this point, and As we're in a straight line, we can use the brakes as hard as we possibly can because the tyre's grip doesn't need to be used for turning, it's only being used for slowing the car down. So the car's slowing down, and now this is where we should be actually easing up off the brake pressure because we're adding an extra load into the car. We're asking it to turn as well as slow down. And if we're slowing down at the maximum force, then it isn't possible to turn as well because we're using all the grip to decelerate. So we have to get on the brakes in a straight line, ease up, and then begin to turn the car into the corner, which if you look at the brake trace here, this driver is doing. Easing up, and now we're just in this control point. And actually, he's back on the accelerator very early, which means if he's back on the throttle so early before the corner here and then got out of the accelerator, if you look at the throttle trace here, he gets on it and then gets off it. So that shows me that he's actually braking a little bit too early. If you're able to get out of the brake long before the apex, as this driver did, get on the throttle, then get off, then get back on again, it shows me that he's actually braking a little bit too early. We should be braking in a straight line, and then as we're coming into this section, easing up, but keeping the brakes on just a fraction, getting the car to just rotate here, so just oversteer a little bit, and then patiently pick up the accelerator, as this driver does on the kind of second attempt. But he's already gone on the throttle once already, which means that he's actually gone into the corner a little bit too slowly. Now this technique is called trail braking, and we've got some other videos on the Driver61 Sim Racing channel. The third biggest mistake that I see drivers make is getting on the throttle too hard initially when they're in the middle part of the corner. Goes back to what I was saying in the previous point, that they stop the car too much, and then to kind of try and make up for the speed, they get back on the throttle too hard and they're impatient to get on it. If you're able to get on the throttle pretty hard at the apex or before the apex, it means that you're not going into the corner fast enough. So as a rule of thumb, if you can smash that throttle pedal before the apex, you're not going in fast enough. Go back to the previous point and have a think about how quickly you're entering the corner. But if you smash the throttle pedal, all we're doing is dropping the grip out of the car. The limit, when we're driving the car on the limit, is not a static point. The limit can be lower for some drivers and higher for others, and it all depends on that technique, and especially in the mid-corner. If you get to the mid-corner and stamp on the throttle, one of two things will happen. It will either spin up the driven wheels with wheel spin, for example, which causes, if it's a rear-wheel drive car, causes the rear to slide very aggressively and very quickly. Or, if it's not a very powerful car, it will just squat the rear of the car down very quickly and cause the car to understeer a lot. So in both of those circumstances, the technique is bringing down the amount of grip that the driver's got and making the car unbalanced. So what we should be doing is trail braking into the corner, as I've just explained, and as I've explained in other videos here. And then before the apex, or just on the apex, we're getting back on the accelerator in a really smooth way. So it's just a fraction of throttle percentage, waiting, and then accelerating out the corner once we can see the exit. And the reason that we do this is because we don't want the platform of the car to change too quickly. If you stamp on the accelerator, yes, we could get the wheel spin, or it just squats the rear down so quickly. Whereas if you get on it smoothly, we bring the platform in smoothly, and then we can accelerate through the corner. So we're keeping that limit as high as possible. We're generating more grip. We're using as much grip as we possibly can, and it makes the car easier to drive because the platform isn't moving around quite as much. So let's check out the throttle application here. You can see that he's on the throttle already way before we can even see the exit of the corner, and then gets out of it again, and finally on and off, and now he smashes it back on. So you can see that this driver's having almost three kind of attempts at the throttle pedal, and all of this extra work on the accelerator is making the car pitch like this, moving the balance around, moving the weight from the front to the rear, and lowering the amount of grip he's got. So smooth out your initial throttle pedal, take a look back at the video like this and make sure that the throttle trace is a little bit for quite a period, like 10-20%, and then you're ramping it up as you come out of the corner, as you open the steering angle. Now that you've seen the 3 biggest mistakes that you can make in sim racing, check out this short playlist that I've put together that will teach you about other techniques such as trail braking and how to take the perfect racing line that will help you be as fast as possible in your sim racing. Just click the video up here and I'll catch you in the next one.